Hello bookish friends, welcome to my October wrap-up part 2. In this wrap-up video, I will first give the monthly statistics for October, and then I will talk about 7 books that I finished and 1 book that I DNF'd in the second half of October. Because of the earthquake that happened in my city, in Izmir, a week ago, on the time that this video will be online, this wrap-up, it is a bit later than my usual wrap-up dates. I'm very glad that I could have a sufficient time period to do this wrap-up because, as I mentioned in my earthquake update video, I'm working very hard since I'm working in the disaster management area. I work on the team which coordinates the disaster relief activities in the field. Anyway, if you want to know more about the earthquake, you can watch my earthquake update video. Let's start with the bookish statistics of October. I read 14 books in October. 3 of those books can be considered adventure or general fiction. 3 of them can be considered chick lit or romance. And I read 3 science fiction, 2 historical fiction, 1 mystery, 1 fantasy and 1 horror book in October. The total number of pages that I read in October amounted to 3,553 pages. I read 2 books less than 100 pages, 6 books between the pages of 100 and 200, 2 books between 200 and 300 pages, 1 book between 300 and 400 pages, 2 books between 400 and 500 pages, and 1 book between 500 and 600 pages. The average page number per book amounted to 253.79 pages. I read 3 books published in 1800s, 1 book published in 1910s, 2 books published in 1980s, 1 book published in 1990s, 1 book published between the years of 2011 and 2015, and 7 books between the years of 2016 and 2019. As for original language, 11 of the books were originally written in English, 2 of them were originally written in Turkish, and 1 of them was written in Norwegian. I read 9 novels, 1 graphic novel, 1 novella, 1 short story collection, 1 play and 1 picture book. As for target audience, I read 9 books targeted towards adults, 3 books targeted towards middle grade, and 2 books targeted towards YA audience. I read 10 ebooks and 4 audiobooks. As for ratings, I rated 3 of the books 6 out of 10, 6 books 7 out of 10, 4 books 8 out of 10, and 1 book 9 out of 10. October has been a good reading month, if not the best of the reading months, but I really liked how varied my reading was, especially as regards to writing format. Let's start with the book that I DNF'd. I unfortunately DNF'd Illuminae by Amie, Kaufman and J. Kristoff once again. I tried to read this book for my yearly goal of giving 4 books that I DNF'd 1 more chance. The main reason that I DNF'd this book, I found the main characters extremely irritating, and I really hated the humor in the book. And I did not want to waste any time reading a book that I would not enjoy in any sense. Even though it's hugely popular and hugely loved in the booktube community, I do not want to stress myself by reading a book that I clearly would not enjoy after trying it for the second time. I finished 7 books, which was a big accomplishment actually. The first book that I finished in the second half of October was The Lost Letter by Mimi Matthew. I read this book for Bitter Single Ladies Read Romance Book Club that is co-hosted by Angie at Literary Labors and Rainey at Rainy Day Reads. who are very, very good friends of mine. This book was a historical romance, sort of like a second chance romance. I can say that I really, really enjoyed this romance and found it to be the sweetest romance that I have read this year actually. I both liked the hero and the heroine almost at the same amount, which actually never happens in a romance book that I read. There is a section in which miscommunication takes over the plot. That was the only thing that sort of annoyed me a bit in the book. Otherwise, it was, as I've said before, it was a very, very sweet romance book. And I will definitely read more from Mimi Matthews. She is one of the favorite authors of Tia and all the books, and I just wanted to say hi to Tia and say that I think she will be one of my favorites too. So in summary, I rated this book 8 out of 10. And then I read a Turkish middle grade book in audiobook format. The title of the book is Oz Yazılımcısı, which can be translated as the programmer of Oz. This is a science fiction retelling of Wizard of Oz, and the story takes place in the Oz world, which is actually a virtual world created by the gaming industry. And I found this retelling to be very modern and really enjoyed how different it was, although it followed the same basic steps in the general plot. So I gave this book, written by İnci, 7 out of 10. I then finished another audiobook, which in play format. It was a classical play, A Dollhouse by Henrik Ibsen. I also listened to this in Turkish. In this play, there is a woman who is very forward-thinking and can be considered actually one of the first feminists of our time. Although I found the ending sections a bit didactic, I really did like the main character and how she realized how unappreciated she actually was in her marriage. So I enjoyed listening to this play and I gave it 7 out of 10. I then finished my favorite book of the month, The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. I buddy read this with Tara from Buzzword Books, which was another great buddy reading experience. I'm very fortunate to have so many wonderful buddy reading friends, and the list gets larger and larger, and I just love this. I want to buddy read as much books as I can if it fits my schedule. The reason I loved this book so much is the writing style actually. The writing style of the book was very easy to read, but on the other hand, it was a it had very good descriptions of the time period and also the haunting atmosphere throughout the book and the spaces. And I especially loved how morally grey all of the characters were. And I heard that there is a play that is adapted by this book, and I will certainly try to listen to that play as well. Lastly, I want to say that in this buddy reading experience, we sort of caught some things that the other one didn't catch before, which was fantastic and made me enjoy the book much more. So that's why I gave this book 9 out of 10, the highest rated book that I read in October. And then I read a middle grade picture book, which was not on my TBR, but I chose Dragon Ride by Helen Cresswell. I chose this book because I wanted to feel the prompt for the fantasy in Fall Into Reading Challenge, which I will talk about at the end of the video. When I started thinking about my November TBR, there was no room for a fantasy book, so I chose a middle grade fantasy, the easiest choice. But unfortunately, this book was a bit average actually. I liked the characters very much. They were sweet and cute, but the plot was not exciting at all. It was not like a middle grade book that would also affect the adults, but it was a sweet one, so I gave it 6 out of 10. And then I finished my second book for Victober, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I have so many things to say about this book actually. First of all, I really liked the general plot of the book. I liked how three-dimensional some of the side characters were. And also, I sort of liked the character development of the main character, Pip, although I did not like him very much in general. On the other hand, I struggled with the writing of Charles Dickens. I guess I've mentioned before in many of my videos, I have read Charles Dickens books as graphic novels when I was very little. And I remember enjoying them very much. So I did not know how detailed Charles Dickens wrote. And sometimes I felt like I was being suffocated in details. So I have really doubts for reading other works by Charles Dickens, I have to admit. Anyway, although Miss Havisham was one of the most eccentric characters that I have read in a classic, and especially Joe and Billy were lovable characters, because of the writing style and some sections which were not exciting at all, I gave Great Expectations 6 out of 10. And lastly, I finished a YA novel, Eliza and Her Monsters. In this book, the main character is a creator of webcomics, although she is a teenager. I could find many relatable points with the same characters, and because she had an online presence, which was, but she was of course much more famous than me, and I could relate to her, especially about always trying to be in the online community. On the other hand, I really like the general idea of balancing these two aspects of life. It was a great lesson to be taken for young adults, actually, I think. And also, the romance between the characters were sort of cute, although I have never been a fan of YA romance. I did not mind so much like in some of the other books that I've read. So that's why I gave this book a 7 out of 10. And lastly, I want to talk about Fall Into Reading Challenge. With the exception of one prompt, I filled all of the prompts in my 24 prompt card. In the second half of October, for young adult, I read Eliza and Her Monsters. For fantasy, I read Dragon Ride. For standalone, I read Great Expectations. For thriller or horror, I read The Woman in Black. And for romance, I read The Lost Letter. So what is left? Non-fiction. And what is November? Non-fiction November. It was for sure that I would read a non-fiction book. I've actually finished all of the prompts at the time that I'm filming this video. But I will talk about my wrap-up for Fall Into Reading Challenge in a separate video. This was my bit longer October wrap-up part 2. Please comment down below what was your favorite book in October, and did you read any of the books that I've mentioned? And if you're a new viewer, first of all, welcome. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you very soon. Bye. As for Turkish word of the day, since my favorite book of October was The Woman in Black, I thought woman should be the word of the day. Woman means kadın in Turkish, and kadın is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day.